Hi everybody, it's Catherine again. I am over the moon excited to be talking to you today about the shadow between your legs. And this is a very challenging topic to talk about because we are speaking of the deepest shadow that most of us have, the deepest repressed and difficult aspect of ourselves that we don't want to look at, that our culture doesn't want to look at. And so if you feel some resistance during my talking today, then you'll know um, how much you could benefit from shadow work in this region of your body and your emotional self. Because the degree to which we feel resistance to something, um, something that isn't legitimately dangerous, is the degree to which we could stand to benefit from really freeing the energy around whatever that is. So the shadow between our legs is our inherited, both in this life and ancestral shame around our own sexual pleasure, around our genitals, around our vagina, our vulva, our penis, whatever you've got. And truly integrating our sexuality and our sexual energy, sexual pleasure into the rest of our energy, the rest of our lives. Because we don't want to do that, and we haven't wanted to do that for millennia, because especially women's sexuality has been regulated, let's say in more recent history, by the church for many, many, many centuries. And women, because of the way that the Genesis story was told and interpreted, because Eve is the original sinner, women's bodies were thought for many, many centuries, and still we have the residue of this today. Women's bodies are thought to be more susceptible to the devil and weaker, and that the devil tends to come in, so to speak, through women's sexuality, specifically through women enjoying themselves, through women's pleasure. I've been doing a lot of reading on the witch trials, and from the 14th through the 17th centuries in Western Europe and the colonial United States. And one of the chief markers of a witch was that she was sexually open. And by the way, witch is a misnomer because these women were healers, right? These women were not evil by any stretch. But because the senses, the bodily senses, were thought, especially by Puritans, to be the playground of the devil, then taking pleasure in your senses was inviting the devil, and that women were particularly weak in this area, and that if they were to enjoy themselves sexually, that surely the devil was at work and would possess them. And this belief was so ingrained in the perception of women, and still is to this day. And I see that because of my own experience as a woman who never experienced, thank God, specific sexual abuse, but who, like all women living, when we experience sexual trauma on a daily basis. We experience this complex trauma, which is repetitive, low-grade pain and hits against our worth, that we're not good enough as we are. We need something always to be good enough, something that's outside of ourselves. We need to bring it in to be good enough. So if you're a woman living today, you've experienced this kind of ongoing complex trauma your entire lives. And so I invite you to now humor me and bring into your awareness an image of your own genitalia, of your vulva, of your penis if you're a man, or whatever you've got. And just observe your body and your heart and your mind's reaction to this image. See how you feel about it. Most women will feel nothing, by the way. In my experience, asking my clients this question, or my friends, they'll just kind of look at it and be like, whatever, it's okay. or they're actively disgusted by it. I have a male client who has severe disgust when he imagines his penis in front of him. And this is incredibly telling. And I would even say it's the quickest, most efficient way to really cut the bullshit and find out how somebody feels about themselves, how worthy somebody really feels. Because our sex organs are ourselves. And in our culture, and for so many hundreds and hundreds of years, we've wanted to take sex and put it in this clean little box where it's apart from our daily life, where our sexual energy is somehow disconnected from our everyday energy. And that's simply a lie. You can't do that. The second chakra is part of our entire chakra system, just to name one system of energy. But you can't disown a part of yourself, especially the part of ourselves that is arguably the most powerful, that is our connection to divine creative energy. And if you're a woman, it is your portal to creating life on this planet. So just hold in your heart for a moment how tragic that is, to feel nothing about the most sacred part of you. It truly is. And the way to heal this shadow, to integrate it and bring it out of its disowned state, we have to give it attention and love. And this is where the real resistance might start to come up, as it did for me when I began this healing process with myself. So we have to be able to touch ourselves. We have to be able to give love to ourselves and to give ourselves pleasure in that way, in order to claim, or to be able to claim truthfully, that we feel worthy just as we are, that our pleasure is something to rejoice in and experience. Because here's the thing about pleasure. Pleasure is just for you. It's a subjective, very fleeting experience. And as women, we've been socialized that our energy belongs to everyone else but us. So if you're pleasuring yourself, what's the point? If you're truly relishing, and by self-pleasure, I don't mean that you just get the job done because you're horny and you just get it over with and it's like changing the oil in your car. I mean really self-pleasure, relishing the experience. But so you might feel like that's weird, it's gross, it's selfish, or just why? Why would you do it? This was how I felt about it. And what I realized is that that was a direct correlate to how I really felt about truly doing anything that was just for me. Because I, like most women, have been socialized to think that things that I only have value in what I can give to other people, in the value that I can bring to other people. So just sit with yourself for a moment and consider, are you able to truly relish and dive into your own pleasure just for yourself, not with a partner? This is why self-pleasure is so important, because a lot of the times when we're having sex or doing sexy things with a partner, especially as women, we can get in this frame of, I'm doing it for him. Oh, he needs me to do this. So it's much cleaner to just do this healing work with yourself and only yourself. So I hope that you can. I hope that that experience of pleasure is accessible and wonderful to you. For most women, it is not. And even a lot of men have this attitude of, I'm just, doing self-pleasure to get it over with. And again, it's like changing the oil in the car. So if that's the case for you, then you also have your work cut out for you. Homework. And also keep in mind too that as an American, because this is where I'm from, so it's what I know, American culture is still heavily influenced by its Puritan roots. And Puritanism held the belief that we must work and discipline ourselves very hard in order to purify the body, which is innately sinful and susceptible to the devil. And so Puritanism has this incredibly dismissive relationship to the body because it is believed that it's evil. And you can see the difference in American treatment of sexuality and the body and body's pleasure in very stark contrast to, let's say, continental Europe's idea of the body's pleasure. Because when I was living in Austria for 2 years, I was an English language teaching assistant with the Fulbright Commission, and one of my jobs was to be an American cultural docent. So I would go in with English language teachers and I would talk to these Austrian high school kids in English about different topics in American culture. And we really got into it, and I loved this job. And we talked a lot about our relationship to race, sexuality, gender. We really talked about everything. And every week when I was living in Innsbruck and Salzburg in Austria, I went to a bathhouse. It was co-ed, and everybody was naked and enjoying themselves and going to the sauna, and it was no big deal. Everybody was taking pleasure in their body. It felt so good to sit in a hot tub or to go in the sauna or to smell the aromatherapy in the sauna. We just don't have that in American culture. Or like my Austrian boyfriend at the time, Andreas, we were in Italy once in Milan, and we got gelato. And I love this little story because I got my gelato and I was really looking forward to walking with it. As an American, I want my pleasurable food, I want my consumable here, and I want to walk with it. And Andreas, he looked at me and he said, in German, of course, but I'll say it in English. He said, "I am not walking with this delicious gelato. I'm going to sit down and enjoy it." And I thought, oh, okay. So I very reluctantly sat down next to him on a bench and ate my gelato. And I felt really strange about it. Like that concentrated, because I saw him relish it. I saw him concentrate on this amazing Italian gelato and how amazingly delicious it was. And there was something that blocked that experience for me as an American. And I didn't know it at the time, but I know in retrospect that in this Puritan influence culture, Americans just were uncomfortable with the body's pleasure. We just are. We want something fast. We want to stay busy so that we're disconnected from the moment, so that we keep going, so we're not really in our body. Again, because of that holdover Puritan belief that the body is the carrier of sin. The body is essentially sinful, and we have to basically run away from it by doing hard work. And that's somewhat of a tangent, but it really isn't, because it really contextualizes just how deep these roots go into our denial of pleasure, and hence its connection to our sense of worthiness as a human being. And so just in closing, I want to give you a few book recommendations if you really want to dive into this beautiful work. I recommended these to many clients and they've just raved about them. The first one is Pussy: A Reclamation by Regina Thomas Hauer. She's the founder of Mama Gina's School of the Womanly Arts in New York. And that's a hilarious, brilliant, full acknowledgement of just how important pleasure is to the experience of being a woman and how we are so thoroughly disconnected from it in our lives. And it's really about pleasure, reclaiming pleasure in all arenas of your life. If you want something a little more sciencey, Come As You Are is really phenomenal. That's by Emily Nagoski. And she is a researcher. She's a PhD. She's a researcher in human sexuality. And her thesis is that everybody has the same parts organized differently. So basically, we're all normal. And yes, when you think you're weird, you are also normal. The last book is my personal favorite, Women's Anatomy of Arousal. It's a beautiful, deeply spiritual book that's also an anatomy guide. So the author, Sherry Winston, is also a nurse midwife. And she teaches you what you've got as a woman and the different parts, and you will be shocked with how ignorant we've all been about what our bodies truly have. And for example, the clitoris is not only a little nub at the top of our vulva, but it has legs. It looks like a wishbone, and all of that is potentially sensual and delicious. And that's just one of the amazing revelations that book makes. And you'll just feel like, why didn't I get taught this stuff about my body when I was in middle school or earlier? My light fell down. So lastly, keep your eye out on my website, because I will start to offer a different kind of session. It'll be similar to my shadow work session, but it will be called Women's Pelvic Integration, because it has been such a passion of mine recently to help women, both who've experienced sexual abuse, but also just the ongoing complex trauma that we have in the society being women, to integrate your pelvic energy, your sexual energy, into the rest of your energetic field, to really be powerful and here and present and influential and magnetic. And the session will be totally clothed and non-invasive. So yeah, it's fun. So look at that coming up in the near future. And I wish you a beautiful exploratory time. And until next time, bye.